till Rosie sits down. All right, we're fortified and ready. So I'll call the Human Resources Committee meeting to order here on February 12th. So first thing is the HR Board report. Mr. Swirsky, anything we need to...
Yeah, what I will tell you, and it's nothing earth-shattering, are that on the staffing report, there will be a couple more retirements on there. One of our teachers that retired just after the first of the year, our first of the start of the second semester here, Mike Valisano, and then Pam Reese has put in her notice, and I believe that's a June 21st date that'll be on there. So we'll have that on after this meeting.
As I remember last year, are people supposed to notify us by April or something?
April 1st.
But
actually, they did. They've done. We've been putting notices out, 3 or 4 notices prior to that date, and last year they did pretty well on that compared to previous years. So, and we're kind of hoping for the same results. I did in conversations with TRA. There have been a number of scheduled meetings with TRA, and they kind of judge how it's going to go based on the appointments they have, and so they're pretty much, they're saying they're comparable to last year. And we also start offering retirement sessions to explain to them how that process works here, and we've had about the same amount of interest. Actually, one of the meetings was supposed to be tonight, and I'm not so sure that. I think they still continued to have it, but only a couple people made it to it. So.
All right. Member Oswald.
I just want to give a shout out to Karen VV retiring. She has a huge amount of title knowledge in her head that will be sorely missed, and I would like to know, where are we in the process of replacing her?
We're taking a look at a number of the clerical positions right now, and some of the duties that could be possibly added to that position. It's one of those positions that she's very, very capable and very good at what she does, but there's times of the year that are more busy than other times of the year, and just looking to kind of fill that position out a little bit with some of the other duties.
Okay. I just would encourage us to hire that as quickly as possible, because having that hole will be noticeable, especially as it gets time for reporting, which is soon.
Anything else? All right. Then we should move on to get ready here. Action items, new policy 404 and regulation 404F. These are in the board book. Is there anything that we should know about this?
No, it's pretty straightforward. We really didn't make any changes out of the MSBA basically policy on that. It's a little bit more descriptive than the one we've had, and I believe ours went back to probably 1995, like all the rest.
1996. Yeah.
96, yes. And it's one of those types of policies that actually follows a state statute as well. So we're kind of working within that state statute with how we implement that policy.
And this is first reading. Member Lefler-Kemp?
Yeah, and I just wanted to mention there was a little bit of discussion with Member Gorman about when we were in the agenda session, just about kind of the monitoring of background checks and making sure it's happening with contracts and things like that too. So just wanted to let you know that was kind of brought up to think about in terms of processes. So. Yeah,
we're required on everybody we employ within the district to conduct a background check. But in addition to that, we have the situation with volunteers and when do they need them and when they don't, and also with contractors. If we're going to have contractors that are going to be working independently and individually with our students in that, they're going to need background checks as opposed to somebody who may be on a construction project where there's no students or anything involved. So.
Thank you.
All right. This is first reading. Is there anything else? Good. Then I think that concludes the HR committee. Excellent. Thank you.
Sorry to put you on the spot.
Nothing like getting old substitute juices flowing again. Welcome to the Business Committee meeting on Tuesday, February 12th. We have the financial report. Anyone have anything to say about that?
Pretty standard report. We are up to date and on a regular schedule now since the audit's been completed, so everything's been up to date. This is through December now, and so we'll be on a regular schedule for the rest of the year.
Everybody okay with that? Okay. APU predictions, do we want to go over those?
Just a comment on...
Could you turn on your microphone, please?
Thank you. Just a comment on the enrollment projection, the third one, if you're looking at board book, with the three charts and graphs with the blue and red. We are projecting down enrollment from, this would be our January enrollment from December. We were at projecting 8168 total adjusted ADM playing out through the end of the year. We're now projecting down to 8155. So just a slight decline compared to last month. And again, this is the representation of how many enrollments do we have, so how many students are creating a record. That's that first column. And then how many unique student counts, not necessarily who's here right now, but from the beginning of the year, how many students have come in and out of the district. So that's over 9,600 students have been moving around. But keeping in mind that some of our early childhood and other classes are less than 1.0, so that's why they generate less than 1, so there's more students than what we actually would earn revenue for. And then again, our budgeted ADM was 8178, so we're down just a hair compared to where our budget is, but we are keeping that in mind as we're doing budget reviews, so would be entertain any questions on that as well.
I just would like a little clarification on what causes the fluctuation. Is it students coming and going between in the district and leaving the district?
Correct.
Okay.
Yep, and oftentimes, you know, at the change of a semester, if students are going from, say, going PSEO the second semester, they may be leaving our district and doing post-secondary. They could be doing online classes. We see students come in as well, and these are all of our students, so this would include ALC. We see a lot of movement in the ALC as well, so very common to be seeing a lot of movement in records.
Okay. Everybody's happy with that, it looks like. There's a worksheet about, or an information sheet about the E-rate that technology uses to buy things. And I think we can all read that unless anybody has any specific questions about that. And so, any questions about the bids that are going out for technology? They're pretty standard if using E-rate, so. Wow, this is easy. Okay. Oh, wait, now we get to the policy. Policy 307, who would like to explain to us why we're seeing that?
This is the second reading.
Yep. So this came to us last month, and we did have some adjustments and discussion at our last month's meeting. So as you're looking through the policy, those things that are bold and underlined are the things that were adjusted from our initial first reading last month. The reason we have this conflict of interest policy is because we were audited in special ed, and we're required to have this on file to make sure that we're in compliance with that special ed audit. And we would entertain any other discussion. I asked the HR folks to stay because I know last time they weren't here and we had some kind of HR questions, and Linda actually helped us after we did the first reading. She went and reviewed the policy as well and made some inputs to make sure that it was in line with what the board wanted to see.
Everybody see the changes that we had talked about? Anything else? Woohoo. All right, I guess we're moving on. Contracts and change orders and leases, any placeholders that we need to talk about?
We did not.
There's a question last night about a contract that Jackie was working on for Greg Fulmer.
Oh, about the realtor?
Yeah.
Hot potato, where's it go?
I guess I thought maybe Jackie had let you know, Bill, but I'm sorry. Oh, no, okay. We, a year ago, we entered into agreement with Fulmer, Greg Fulmer, Fulmer Real Estate, to represent us on Nettleton, Central, and Hartley, and that agreement was executed by the superintendent, and it was an informational item to the school board. Today, I've got a amendment to that agreement to extend this contract for one additional year with the same criteria or conditions in that contract. And I'm not clear if it's an informational item. I don't know if we decided that if it was informational or if it was an action item.
Yeah. Well, and it's not on the agenda right now, so we can figure that out when it's on the agenda. So.
Go ahead, Mr. Hill.
What, it was informational last time?
Correct, it was informational. The superintendent entered into agreement at the board's direction from a closed session with Fulmer Realty
Yeah,
a year ago.
Okay, so it could be informational, again, really, in my opinion.
Could it be voted on to be brought into this agenda?
Wait. You would have to vote. The board would have to vote on that at the board meeting to add it to the agenda, because you can't take action during this meeting to add it to the agenda. I think if we I'm going to have to look into how we should go about that. Because if they're not voting on it separately, then it could come as informational. So I will seek direction.
I would encourage you guys to send out that contract as soon as possible if you're going to add it or not, so we can look at it, since we won't have had time to discuss it prior. We have donations, and we have the release and pledge of collateral. You want to talk about either one of those? Superintendent Grant says.
Sorry. page is that?
The E-rate?
No, the
Donations.
release of, there we go, 37. Oh, this isn't what I thought it was. That's yours.
This is with Harbor Point Credit Union, and because we have so many different accounts and are over the FDIC credit limit for coverage, we request that Harbor Point pledge collateral to cover any defaults. If they went under or something, they would cover our accounts. So they invest in these treasuries and CDs, and it's usually governmental securities. And so one of them that they had pledged matured, so they had to replace that. So that's what this document, and then we're required to have the board accept that release and pledge of a new instrument.
That clears that up for me anyway. Anybody else have any questions about it? Okay. Then we have contracts, expenditures, no cost contracts, and revenue contracts. For once, I looked through them and I didn't have any questions, so sorry. I'm usually the one asking the questions there, but anyone need more time to look? Or if you're okay, just kind of nod your head so I know. Thank you very much. Okay. Facilities report, Mr. Spooner.
It was a cold and snowy month, and to say the least, and our facilities maintenance and operations staff did a great job of keeping the buildings warm, clean, and conducive for teaching and learning. The facilities report is pretty normal. One thing I'd like to point out is this is the second month in which we've received SIP money, conservation improvement money, and last month was through Minnesota Power, and this month it's through the city of Duluth, and we received a total of $17,401, and those are for efforts that we make. Some was at Rockridge and some are at other schools, but we work closely with Energy Insight, who represents both Comfort Systems and Minnesota Power for the SIP program. Every project I do, I work closely with them, and we install the most efficient components we can afford and achieve the best rebate that we can. So we evaluate all projects we do. So that is a noteworthy item. In the health and safety area, we've put on the business committee meeting agenda for March. Jason Barsness and Marsh MMA will be here to do a question and answer session and maybe a 10-minute presentation on where we're at with work comp, what we're doing to mitigate potential injuries or injuries, how we're looking at reports that we have that might help us reduce cost. So that'll happen next month at this business committee meeting. But other than that, it's a pretty normal month. I'd be happy to answer any questions if anybody had any.
Member Lafleur-Kemp.
Yeah, thank you again for your complete report. I had a question about the radon testing. That's done every year, the radon testing?
No.
What's the process with that?
Okay, radon is not required. It's not in statute yet. It's a recommended practice by MDE. We haven't done radon testing for a number of years, but I'd say we're ahead of the curve of most school districts. We're testing every building, and the recommendation is that you test every classroom, every occupied classroom that comes in contact with the earth, and then you have to test 10% of those rooms above that room. So we're doing approximately 2,250 tests in the district, and those results will be available once those tests are completed. I think it will be law in 1 to 3 years, but it's a recommendation at this point. But it's a good practice to do.
Great, thank you. Is there legislation that has gone through recently? I know There was a few years ago when I did environmental work, but
Nothing to make it a law to tell school districts to do it. It's still just a recommendation through MDE.
okay, great. Thank you for
Sure.
making it happen.
Have we ever had a problem with radon?
Not that I'm aware of.
I hope we can keep that trend going.
I do too.
I had a couple other questions. Where does the money from the rebate checks go? How do you redirect that money?
I don't actually see it. It goes to Peggy and then it gets,
You're going to get a bad reputation, Peggy, taking all the money.
It's deposited into the general fund, and it's supposed to help offset the payment that we make on those 3 installment lease purchases, those bond payments that we make out of the general fund. So that was part of the original financing plan for the long-range facility plan, that those rebates would help offset the costs of those bond payments.
I think that's a good thing. Member Lafler-Kim?
Yeah, I actually wanted to ask you too about the letter you had attached from Jim Benning with the city about the energy savings through Rockridge School. Can you just kind of highlight that a little bit more?
basically what that letter indicates is that Energy Insight, who works for, as I mentioned, Comfort Systems and Minnesota Power, they work with me, they work with our design professional, they work with our contractors, and they work in conjunction with all of us when we were constructing and selecting equipment, designing Rockridge. And we selected a boiler that was within budget that was energy efficient, and that resulted in good savings. The gas ovens in the kitchen, the boiler room pipe insulation qualified, domestic hot water pipe insulation, kitchen fan controls, and we look at everything that we can do that can result in a potential savings. And as an example, this is just from Comfort Systems. From Minnesota Power, we had a SIP rebate for lighting, for example. So we've had multiple rebates that have come previous to this point.
Great, thank you. Thanks for your work on that.
I have a question about ALICE training. How many employees or what groups of employees have yet to be initially trained in ALICE? And my follow-up question to that is the school board ever going to participate in an ALICE training? In the facilities update. It's we're
not
flying
exactly
through here.
Facilities,
but it's listed. ALICE training was held in here, so that's why I'm asking.
Everyone has gone through the e-training, and we had sent the board an initial link in. I don't know if you took that opportunity to do that. Otherwise, I think that there was one or two that didn't have that opportunity that did that later. We did training with Hawk's staff here earlier this week. That's why the furniture is not quite where it should be right now, because we held it in this room partially. That training went very well. A little bit different for this building because it's not traditional classrooms. Practicing in the boardroom with 7 exits was a little bit different, but it was a good opportunity. We have plans for this summer, the paraprofessional group and others in kitchen service to go through the training in August in those in the staff development days before school. And otherwise, other groups have had additional e-training that are specific to their positions. And so if the board members wanted to go through that, we could certainly arrange for that. The next trainings that we plan to do would be in August with the paraprofessionals.
I think it would be advantageous for us to have training perhaps surrounding what a board meeting looks like. because we're here and it's open and public and you never know who's going to walk in the door.
Okay.
Just saying. That's my thought and suggestion. I think we can talk about that with our board chair and see what she feels about that. So other than that, what do we have left? Property updates. We had the closed meeting yesterday. I don't know if we have any other questions to talk about. No. And the overview of the data requests. Received information for school board. Let's talk about that. Who wants to? Don't everybody jump at once. I don't know why I'm using the link page, so the quick view.
Can we have Kathy present?
Sure.
Yeah. Okay, great.
Oh, Jackie's coming.
But we love Jackie.
Have a chocolate.
So what I tried to do real quick was just give a real high-level overview of the process that's followed. So that's kind of spelled out there. I don't know if you guys want me to go over it or if you have questions, or we set up a data request email specific to data requests, and certain people receive that email when folks use that to send in information. Otherwise, if they're sending it directly to the superintendent, the assistant superintendent, or HR, they're forwarding it all to me for tracking. We have a spreadsheet where we're tracking who we received it from, what they're requesting, date we received it, date we acknowledged it, who's working on what, time frames, cost, if there's any cost. Copies are always free, but if they want, inspection is free, but if they want copies, there's a charge for copies. And that's always communicated ahead of time, so we know that they're committed to paying, so if we're going to do all this work. But sometimes it happens where we do the work and then they realize, oh, okay. But and that's basically it. And then we have a folder that's started. We keep the requests for 3 years for data retention guidelines. And we're trying really hard to communicate throughout the process. I do all of the reaching out to different people saying, here's the request I received. Is this your area? Can you help me with this? Send it back to me. And then I keep track of all the communications, all the data that's sent out, all the monies that I received.
How much time does this take for you as part of your job?
It can be pretty significant. Sometimes when it rains, it pours. They all come in at once, but it can be a lot just because of all the tracking and the communications and the following up and documenting. So it can be intense.
Do you have other people to help you if that should occur? Or is it just all on your shoulders?
Well, a lot of the times I'm not pulling the information together. I'm not, it's HR or facilities or whatnot. So I'm just getting the information from them. So a lot of the data gathering falls on other people's shoulders. I'm the one that's just kind of corralling all of the moving parts.
Okay. Superintendent Gronzo?
I think that the largest time commitment comes in redaction. When we have large requests that require that we take out personnel information or legal advice or employee information or student information, that takes a lot of time, and Jackie and Melinda both take some of that on. I know that one of the requests that we received, at least one of them, we had our attorneys work on that with a whole team of people, because when we looked at the amount of redaction, I think we figured out if 2 people were to work on it for full time, it would take 6 years if that's all they were doing. And so, we try to have people narrow down their request as much as they can to be specific about what they're looking for. And Jackie does a great job of asking questions and making sure that we're providing the information people really want, rather than thousands and thousands of pages of things they may not want. So.
Or not realize that they're requesting. And then there's researching the statutes and what can we release, what's public versus private, and timeframes and all of that. So,
Member Loeffler-Kemp?
Yeah, I was just going to really highlight what Superintendent Grunz had highlighted, is that we have had experience, particularly this year, with just a large quantity of staff time going into this. And that should just be acknowledged, that that staff time then takes away from the other work that our staff has to do, and not that we shouldn't honor them, but we need to acknowledge data requests and the impact it has on the other work our staff are able to do.
Hello, Member Sandstead.
Hello.
We're near the end, and we're talking about
the last page.
The data requests. Yes.
Well, I wanted, picking off Member Loeffler-Kemp's comments, do we track the hours that are spent? Because I think that it would be useful for us to track both the hours and the costs associated, either our costs or the costs that we charge people. I think that's information that could be useful in the future. I feel like in the next 5 years, you'll see some movement for a change in the law, and for us to have data to support some change to legislation based on the amount of resources it takes to comply with these would be a very useful thing.
Excellent idea. Do you have more to say, Mr.
I do. I did want to mention that the majority of requests that we get are pretty small, pretty reasonable. Might be 3 pages of information, or they're looking for a certain report, and sometimes we can just direct them to the website where it is. There are probably, let's say last year there were 41 requests. There are probably maybe 4 or 5 of those that were substantial is a good word. That if we did track the time, and the dollars for those would be in the tens of thousands of dollars and hundreds of hours. So, yeah, I agree.
I also concur. That's an excellent suggestion. We want to be able to back up our claims with data in order to request change. The only question I have is that, there's still 3 in progress as of right now, according to your little chart. Are those all within the relative timeframes that are allowed?
So this is as of January 31st. I've actually closed one.
Okay.
So we're down to 2 open, and those are actually fairly time-consuming. Facilities is working on them. Okay. They received a request, so it's a very manual process what they're going through for the redaction of personal information and whatnot, and they're working fast and furious. We're hoping to have something at the end of this week. But so they're all pretty timely, and then we've been communicating with the requesters just to let them know this is what it entails, not to try and persuade them to revoke the request, but just that it's going to take us some time. It's a very manual process. We're having to go to several different places for the information and then redact certain things, and then we'll get it to you as soon as we can, and they're fine. They understand.
I think that would be an excellent place to start documenting hours
and
time.
That's a really good point.
Obviously. Are we all okay with that?
I just say one more thing.
Sure. Not like snow's falling outside or anything. But.
Something new that we've noticed is that some of the requests are coming from companies or organizations who are asking for information that perhaps would better position them to give us a proposal that fits past practice or information. So it's just another layer of data requests that we're getting.
Okay. A placeholder for an audit engagement letter. Do we have that? And can somebody just highlight what we have to look forward to if it's not there?
We accepted last year. We accepted Whipley's proposal for a 5-year, but every year they do an engagement letter for the current year coming up, or actually this current year, they would be auditing starting this summer. So I have sent a request to Whipley to ask for that engagement letter. Normally it's done at this time of the year. I know they've had some personnel turnover there at Whipley, so I will follow up on that and see where we're at.
Okay. Other than that, we just have future items. Budget stuff coming up, woohoo. Time stuff. Time for the hard part of our jobs. Any other conversation need to be had?
So I just want to highlight and connect with that as well. It looks like March is our first opportunity to look at the adoption of budget considerations and investments, and that will happen at a committee meeting. Good job. Okay. And then just for me, because this is my second time going through it, but last year I was just a newbie and I just listened. So now, so then in April is when we continue with our budget information and we vote on our budget in June.
Right.
Okay. Lots of stuff. So thank you. Thanks. Work hard.
Member Lafferkamp.
Yeah, and we do vote on a preliminary budget in April, usually at the end of April. Yeah. So I don't have anything about this. I just wanted to add something before we wrapped up the meeting.
I know in previous years we've had a committee of the whole to discuss budget stuff or not. Is that happening during the preliminary discussion or later in the details or not at all? What's your plan, Kathy? Since it's your first time with us with this.
I think all of that is still in process, and I think as we start putting information together, we will be working together with administration and with board members to decide the best process. So I could see us running it through business committee or having a committee of the whole, depending on the time and availability of board members.
Okay. Sounds like we'll have to talk about that. Member Lafferkamp, what else?
Yep, I just want to wish everyone a great week off next week, and then also remind folks that some of us will be going down to the St. Louis County Days, Duluth and St. Louis County Days, to do lobbying and continued lobbying on the work that Kathy and Bill have been doing very actively with our lobbyists. Just really wanted to highlight that. We're looking forward to a couple of days of many, many meetings and hopefully some good reports on processes. So we just wanted that noted.
Okay. Well, in world record substitute fashion, we're done.
Drive safe.